Oh, but that reminds me. Speaking of Democracy Now, there was a former reporter from Democracy Now named Aaron Maté, who
he worked there.
Yes, I know that only because he has claimed that he's become very disappointed in how pro-imperialist they've become.
Well, that's when I think of pro-imperialists, I certainly think of Democracy Now.
And apparently, it's my understanding that in my absence, there was when Nomi was on. She had made a statement about him that that he has taken issue with. Now, I want to be clear about something. My knowledge of this guy is extremely limited. Up until actually today, I had never read anything by him. Well, this was actually an interview, the Chaz Friedman one. But my only experience of this guy starts with about 30 years ago. I did a commercial. I was hired to do a commercial for the U.S. Open.
Oh.
Did I ever tell you about this?
No. Which one? The golf or the tennis?
The tennis. And it was with this other guy, and we did these like really stupid spots on like on the roof of like some tall building in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. But then we moved up to where they do the tennis tournament.
Mm-hmm. Arthur Ashe.
Yeah, and I shot a promo for the next day for the finals on the court with, I think it was either Pete Sampras or Boris Becker.
Wow.
And I was
How do you not remember which one?
I can't remember it, but I was on the court. I literally had to run out onto the court as they were playing.
Wow.
And it was one of the most incredible things I had ever seen. How, I used to play tennis when I was a kid.
Right.
But I never realized how hard they hit the ball. I mean, it was a totally different game at that level.
We have the video.
And
I mean,
it's not important.
Maybe later,
but it's out there. But
I'll watch it later.
And it was then when I understood why, because I was always flummoxed, like, why would someone be a ball boy? And it is to be on the court at that moment is really exciting. And I bring that up only because my entire experience with Aaron Maté,
I was wondering where you're going with this,
has been when I have gotten into like Twitter beefs with like, I don't know, with Jimmy Dore or Glenn Greenwald or something like that. He shows up like he's a ball boy, like completely out of nowhere, shows up in these fights. And I'm like, what? Who are you? Why are you here?
Yeah.
And
he's kind of like a barnacle.
No, he reminds me of a ball boy.
Okay.
Anyways, so I just want to make that clear. But Matt, these guys have been on you for some type of like correction. So here is the clip that we were talking about.
Of Nomi.
Yeah.
You can spend your time doing what Aaron Maté is doing, is denying genocide all day long, because that's also a path to making a lot of money on the internet.
Okay. So, and apparently, Nomi was talking about the his denial of the Uyghur genocide. And here's an example.
To be fair, from my perspective, Em and I could have maybe stepped in to clarify that. I'm a little bit sensitive to that criticism, but anyway, here is the substance to that.
And here is, and this is where Aaron Maté says, I guess
in response to Josh Rogan saying China using Imagine in the Beijing 2020 opening ceremony, John Lennon must be rolling over in his grave. Imagine if there was no Uyghur genocide. And Maté says there is no Uyghur genocide. And you fully know that I can only imagine there being no neocon propagandists. The world would be a safer place.
Now, I think the world would be a safer place without neocon propaganda. So I agree with that. And to be fair, there is controversy over whether there has been a Uyghur genocide in China. There does not seem to be any controversy as far as I can tell. I mean, I'm looking at the Human Rights Watch which I am sure has been cited. Well, I don't know for a fact by Aaron Maté, but Human Rights Watch has been cited certainly in the context of other situations.
And I can understand the criticism of saying we should not use the term genocide lightly. I mean, it's like I'm critical of people calling the war in Ukraine a genocide. That's,
right, like Putin said Ukraine is doing a genocide. No, Ukraine saying Putin's doing a genocide. Like this is a politically operative term.
Yes.
But can I just say like my piece? I'm like certainly skeptical of certain neocon propagandists talking about this, like Marco Rubio talking about genocides. Well, it's like when people like that are talking about it, I need to know what we're defining as a genocide, because like when I see like what's going on with the Uyghurs, like cultural genocide seems like a watchword to at least be concerned about with regards to that.
Yes.
And but I don't think say like Marco Rubio is as sensitive to what a cultural genocide is as say I would want to be.
Well, does Marco Rubio believe that the United States committed a genocide of
Precisely.
Native Americans? Does he perceive the continued occupation of Palestine, of the West Bank and Gaza as a cultural genocide in and of itself? Because then if we're using a term like that, it all depends on the context of who's using it and why they're using it.
And what they mean, yeah.
Now, I've been out for a couple of weeks. So I haven't followed this, but at least as recently as the first or second week in March, there were something like 200 human rights groups who had written an open letter to the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. They had done a report on the Chinese government rights violations targeting Uyghurs, Uyghurs, I should say. And I don't think that there's any controversy that, I don't know how many, if it's hundreds of thousands, Uyghurs have been essentially, I don't know what you would call it, concentrated into camps, labor camps, that there is an assault on them based upon their being Uyghurs. And it is controversial as to how many of these people have been killed. And so,
but violence has broken out.
And at the very least, there is a cultural erasure that is happening.
That seems actually very similar, just in pattern, to American genocide of the Native Americans, like a major nation state expanding infrastructure into, parts of the hinterlands that go through populations that aren't quite ready to or willing to, meld in.
And you can make and you can have a debate about the precision of those kinds of terms. Like we're having a nuanced conversation about that now, but I think an outright denial is.
Well,
that's farther than I would certainly go.
Yeah,
I think at the very least,
far.
That is our clarification that he seemed to have wanted. And that clarification is that he says there is no Uyghur genocide. And certainly it is, there is controversy as to whether there is a Uyghur genocide.
I didn't realize that we were called upon for.
Apparently through Twitter there has been a big issue.
The ombudsman spoken. So
there we go.
Okay.